Hi guys, it's Stephanie from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a very last minute TBR for the Scallywagathon and also doing my weekly wrap up for the last week. So I'm not going to spend too much time blabbering on really because quite frankly we don't have time for that. So the Scallywagathon is taking place from the 5th to the 11th of November. It is a pirate-themed readathon and it is being hosted by Ellie from Hardback Hoarder and Amanda from Read All the Books. So I will leave links to their channels down below so you can check it out if you like. I really just picked books that were on my very current TBR to read for the challenges here. It does have a really awesome map, which I'll pop up on the screen, and you follow the map and read 4 books based on the prompts of where you land on the map. Go check out the original video so you can check out how it all fits together. I'm not going to try and explain it because by the time this video goes up, it will be the 6th of November and I will have started my readathon and hopefully have read at least one of the books so far. So on the map, I'm starting from prompt number 4, which is Davy Jones's Locker, and that is to read a book with death in it. And I'm going to read Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerry Maniscalco. This came in the mail last week and I really want to read it, so I'm going to read it, and it's about Dracula, so I'm assuming there's going to be some death in it. From that, I went to number 7, which is The Crow's Nest, and that is to read a new release book that you've had your eye on. And I'm cheating a little bit, but I'm going to read Two Kinds of Truth by Michael Connolly, which is a book that I was sent for review, so it is a 2017 release. I may not have necessarily gone to pick this up myself, but I am going to read this anyway because it's a new release and I have to read it. Then I enter the Detour and I'm doing Detour B, which is But Why Is the Rum Gone? And that is to read a book that is part of a series, and I'm going to read Lady Helen and the Dark Days Pact by Alison Goodman because I really want to continue the series, like really. So this gives me an excuse to pick this up this week and not later in the month. And finally, I end up at Challenge 9, which is Clear the Deck, read a book from your TBR. And for that, I'm going to be reading This Is Shyness by Leanne Hall because this was the October Love Osway Book Club book of the month and I didn't get a chance to read it. So I want to read it and clear it off my TBR. So that is my readathon TBR, and now I'm going to get into the wrap up. So this is my reading wrap up from the 29th of October until the 4th of November. This week I read 5 books, a total of 1,716 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 227 books. So let's get into them. The first book I read is 1,000 Hills by James Roy and Noel Zihabamwe. I probably butchered that, so I apologize. But this is I'm going to say it's a young adult book, but the characters are more middle grade age, but I probably wouldn't recommend this to anyone below young adult reading age. It is set during the Rwandan genocide in 1994, and it is told from the perspective of a survivor of that time. Pascal goes to school with his friends and he has a really loving family. However, around him, things in the community have changed and shifted and he doesn't really understand what it means, but he can see that the people that he cares about are growing more and more agitated as time goes on. And eventually we find out through Pascal's interactions a few years later with a school psychologist that we unpack what has happened to him and to his family and the impact that has had on his life, which is a really poor description, but it's kind of difficult to describe. This book was heartbreaking to read. I didn't know much about the Rwandan genocide, and this book is very powerful and I think would be quite confronting for quite a few people, especially for kids. So I think unless you're planning on unpacking it with them, I would choose the reader of this really carefully. But that said, it was great to have a book with a co-author who experienced this. It is like an Own Voices book. 1,000 Hills was published in 2016 by Omnibus Books, which I think is an imprint of Scholastic, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Suddenly One Summer by Fleur MacDonald, and this was sent to me for review by Ellen and Unwin, so it is a 2017 release published by Arena, which is one of their imprints, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think last week in my wrap up, I spoke really briefly about the summary. Brianna Donahue lives in Western Australia on a farm that she co-runs with her father. Her husband is a lawyer who flies in and out of Perth, and on her birthday, her oldest son goes missing and they have to track him down. But that brings up memories of her own mother's disappearance when she was a child. And in South Australia, a police detective heads out to visit one of the local farmers who has reported some sheep missing. He begins to investigate the family history of this gentleman who seems to be suffering from dementia. From there, the two stories begin to interweave. There are actually three perspectives in this book. So we see Brianna's perspective, the detective's perspective, and also a third unknown person. And it plays a lot with timing of when events occurred. So it was an interesting read because I didn't expect it to go quite the way that it did. And something that I thought was going to happen happened in a way that I didn't expect, if that makes sense. So it was, a very enjoyable sort of mystery read set in Outback Australia, and I quite enjoyed it. Then I read Urban Outlaws Blackout by Peter J. Black, which was given to me by our school's librarian to read, and I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. It is a 2015 release from Bloomsbury, and I honestly couldn't really tell you the summary of this in any detail because I really didn't enjoy it all that much. It is the second book in a series, so maybe that hindered, but I also just didn't find the characters really interesting at all. So the Urban Outlaws are a group of preteens and young teenagers who appear to have run away from home or have no home, but are very, very tech savvy. And you've got hackers and mechanical engineers and all sorts of things. So maybe it's just the far-fetched element of it that really graded against me. I mean, this is more middle grade than young adult. Basic premise: there is a computer virus that apparently they unintentionally set free in the first book, and so they are doing everything that they can to track it down. As I said, I can't explain the plot properly because I didn't read it properly because I just wasn't really enjoying it. That said, I do know a couple of kids in my school who would really enjoy this because they enjoy that element of kids being hackers and going on adventures and being almost like spies. Then I read Shadow Black by Sebastian D. Castell, which is the second book in the Spell Slingers series, and this was sent to me for review by Alan and Unman, so thank you very much. This is a 2017 release from Hotkey. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. Whereas the first book, I think I've forgotten a lot about it because while I remember enjoying the first book, I also remember not necessarily understanding all of the plot. This one, I just thoroughly enjoyed. So it is the story of Kellen, who has been exiled from his own people, and he's traveling with an Argosy who he calls Farius, and also the Shadow Cat, who is one of my favorite characters because he's just so snarky. And they are trying to remain hidden, and Kellen is hoping that Farius will teach him the ways of the Argosy so that he will finally have a place where he belongs. I'm not going to say much more than that because that would ruin the plot, as it is the second book in a series, but this is just a really different fantasy read and I highly, highly enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I loved what was revealed. There is a truly awesome fight training sequence that is not a fight training sequence in this, and the way that it is just described is just beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. And Kellen really grew on me in this book. I really appreciate him as a character, so I would recommend this series if you haven't picked it up. Even if you have to push through the first book, I think the second book really just picked up the pace and was really well written. The last book that I read on my Kindle, and that was It Came From the Deep by Maria Lewis. This is a 2017 self-published ebook release, and it has been out for about 5 days, and guys, pick it up. It was incredible. It is a merman story. It was just incredible. It is Love Oz YA. Maria Lewis is the author of the Who's Afraid series, and this particular story is about Kaya, who lives on the Gold Coast, has always been involved in surf culture. Her father was a professional surfer and she herself has gone into it, and her brother is quite good as well. Prior to the events of the book, she was involved in an accident that had serious ramifications for her and her family, and she is suffering from a bit of post-traumatic stress from the event, as well as just generally feeling a lot of guilt. She's getting back into her training, and one afternoon she is attacked by 2 unknown assailants. She finds herself diving into this man-made freshwater river and trying to swim her way to safety when she is saved by something mysterious in this lake. And the whole story is how she uncovers what is in the lake and how it got to be there. What I really loved about this story, and I think I tweeted this when I read it, because I read this book in one sitting. I picked it up and I sat and read it for about 3.5 hours, and I absolutely adored it. I loved Kaya's relationship with her brother Storm. They were just so funny and so real, and they felt like family, and they had the same struggles that families have, which was just really refreshing to see. I also like the way that Maria Lewis adapted sort of those mermaid myths and incorporated those into her story. And I really loved the ending of it as well, which was just beautiful and bittersweet and hopeful, regardless of whether or not there is a sequel to this. And I don't know, and I believe at this point it's just a standalone book. It could go either way, but I love the way that it was just wrapped up. And there is something really lovely about a book that tells a complete story from start to finish. And when you put it down, you just sit there and you go, gee, that was good. And that was what this book was. So I highly recommend, if you have time, to pick up this ebook. It was really great. It makes me want to read more books about mermaids and mermaid myths, but they're going to have to do a lot to top this one because it was just so well done. So that is everything that I read this week. It was a pretty good reading week, I have to admit, and I'm looking forward to the Scallywagathon, and then I've got the Book Nerdathon, and then I've got Tome Topple. So I've got TBR set until pretty much the end of this month. In the comments down below, let me know what you have been reading this week, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. See you later, guys.